All right, now on our screen is a gentleman by the name of Anthony C. Sutton. Again, another very brilliant American and British economist and researcher who did a lot of very powerful work in the 20th century. Notice what this man says about the rise and progress of the Nazi regime and how they were able to come to prominence the way they did. He says the buildup for European war was before and after 1933 was in great part due to Wall Street financial assistance. I'll read that again. This buildup for European war was before and after 1933 was in great part due to Wall Street financial assistance. Now, the purpose of this is not to go through all of the details as to how Adolf Hitler was able to rise to power, but most persons, especially living in the Western world, have no idea that the Nazi regime would not have become what it became without the influence of Western financial capitalism. It says in the 1920s, the create the German cartel system and to technical assistance from well-known American firms. In the middle, it says, whereas this financial and technical assistance is referred to as accidental or due to the short-sightedness of American businessmen, the evidence presented below strongly suggests some degree of premeditation on the part of these American financiers. Similar and unacceptable pleas of accident were made notice on behalf of American financiers and industrialists in the parallel example of the building the military power of the Soviet Union from 1917 onwards. I wonder if the Cold War would not have even been possible if it was not for the influence and power of American financial capitalism. As we shall see, the pleas of innocence do not accord with the facts. Now on our screen, now we're going to just get a very brief illustration of this cozy liaison between American multinational corporations and the Nazi Party. Now on our screen, we have a symbol of a man by the name of Henry Ford. That's the man that is in the white. And this particular picture of Henry Ford, these two men standing next to Henry Ford, they were actually a part of the Nazi regime. Henry Ford was receiving something called the Golden Cross of the German Eagle, which was the highest award, the highest medal that could be given to foreigners by the Nazi Party. And this was given to Henry Ford in 1938. Now notice what Anthony C. Sutton says in his book, Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler, as it relates to Henry Ford's cozy liaison with the Nazi regime. Notice, on December 20th, 1922, the New York Times reported that automobile manufacturer Henry Ford, notice, was financing Adolf Hitler's nationalist and anti-Semitic movements in Munich. Simultaneously, the Berlin newspaper Berliner appealed to the American ambassador in Berlin to investigate and halt Henry Ford's intervention into German domestic affairs. Again, most of us as the American public have absolutely no idea that Henry Ford and the Ford Motor Company greatly helped Adolf Hitler to rise to power. And it just wasn't the Ford Motor Company, it was companies like IBM, Industrial Business Machines, and many of these other corporations that used their influence to rise Adolf Hitler to power. You see, dear friends, one of the things that we tend to fail and tend to not realize, especially when it comes to war, is that war is a business. And men who are businessmen, who are not controlled by principle and the power of God, will do anything to make money, even if it means the sacrifice of the lives of millions of people. It is literally satanic. Now on the screen, we're going to get an illustration of what was the Third Reich. So besides fascism, the Nazi regime also called itself the Third Reich. Notice this. Nazi Germany. Now, this is taken directly from Wikipedia. Now, notice what was the Third Reich. Notice this. Nazi Germany, officially known as the German Reich, and later the Greater German Reich, refers to the German state between 1933 and 1945, when Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party controlled the country, transforming it into a totalitarian dictatorship. Notice, the Third Reich, meaning Third Realm or Third Empire, referred to the Nazi claim that Nazi Germany was the successor to the earlier Holy Roman Empire. I wonder if there was any intrinsic correlation between the Nazi Party and the Holy Roman Empire, which was dominated by Roman Catholicism. And again, in light of that, I wonder if there was any correlation between the Nazi Party and the Roman Catholic institution. Notice this. Now, on our screen is a symbol of the Holy Roman Empire. This, as it were, if I'm not mistaken, was the coat of arms, the double-headed eagle. Notice this. This is taken from a very powerful volume called Ecclesiastical Empire by A.T. Jones. This says, at this Otto went a second time into Italy. In 962, deposed Berenger and was crowned emperor by the Pope. The emperor, at the request of the Pope, promised upon oath to defend the Roman Church against all her heresies, and at the bottom, to assist the Pope to the utmost of his power when assistance was wanted. Thus, in the year 962 was formed the Holy Roman Empire, that mightiest weapon of the papacy in the Middle Ages. So in layman's terms, the Holy Roman Empire was established in 962 when these German leaders essentially gave over their power to the papacy, and that inaugurated a system of political affairs in Western Europe where essentially all of the states of Western Europe just did the political bidding of the Roman Catholic institution. Now, in light of the Nazi Party calling themselves the Third Reich and the Holy Roman Empire was the First Reich, I wonder if the Nazi regime with Adolf Hitler as its head was nothing more than the papacy trying to use that influence in order to dominate the world again. Notice. Now, on our screen is a particular gentleman by the name of Edmund Paris. He wrote a very powerful book called The Secret History of the Jesuits. Notice, the public is practically unaware of the overwhelming responsibility carried by the Vatican and its Jesuits in the start of the two world wars, a situation which may be explained in part by the gigantic finances at the disposition of the Vatican and its Jesuits, giving them power in so many spheres, especially since the last conflict. At the bottom it says, this study, talking about the book, is based on irrefutable archive documents, publications from well-known political personalities, diplomats, ambassadors, and eminent writers, most of whom are Catholics, even attested by the imprimatur. So Edmund Paris is clearly here communicating, just re-emphasizing, as it were to some degree, what Anthony Sutton was telling us, that the Roman Catholic institution was merely using Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime in order to dominate the world again, as it was dominating the world during the time of the Holy Roman Empire. Now, this is a very interesting article from News 24 taken back in 2014. Notice, this says the Pope and the Vatican refused the truth of Genesis. Now, notice this. This says the Catholic Civilization is a periodical published by the Jesuits in Rome since 1850. Before World War II, notice this statement. It was written, for today Rome considers the fascist regime to be the nearest to its dogmas and interests. And even to this day, very sadly, there are very many Catholic apologists who will try to say that Pope Pius XII did everything that he possibly could to stop the Holocaust, but that is nothing more than a bold-faced lie. Eugenio Pacelli, Pope Pius XII, knew perfectly well what Adolf Hitler and his regime were doing, and he very well consented to the butchery and the bloodshed. Notice, again, it says, we have not merely the Reverend Jesuit Father Coughlin praising Mussolini's Italy as a Christian democracy, but Catholic civilization. House Organ of the Jesuits says, quite frankly, notice, fascism is the regime that corresponds most closely to the concepts of the Church of Rome. Again, for those that have never read this before, I hope that this greatly helps to solidify that the Roman Catholic institution has absolutely nothing to do with the precepts of the gospel that we read in the Word of God. Because again, as we just went before, fascism is a unification of corporate power and political power, and the Roman Catholic institution is saying that fascism is the great embodiment of the reality of the Roman Catholic ideology and dogma.